Blessings, YouTube. Today, I'd like to do a quick Bible study of Psalm chapter 3.
God of peace, Lord of all, great I am, thy spotless Lamb.
Welcome to A King Serving the King. My name is John King, and I serve the King of Kings. All right, Psalm 3. O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. Selah. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill. Selah. I lay down and slept. I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God. For you strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people. Selah. All right, let's take a look at verses 1 and 2, which say, O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. Selah. All right, so in verses 1 and 2, we see many foes, many rising against me, many are saying of my soul. And then also, if you jump forward to verse 6, you'll see it says many thousands. And so here, Absalom had 50 men at the beginning of his conspiracy against David. We can see that in 2 Samuel 15:1. That was 50 men. Ahithophel wanted to choose 12,000 men to go after David. That's in 2 Samuel 17:1. And then Absalom ultimately pursued David with all the men of Israel in 2 Samuel 17:24. So when we consider the context of Psalm chapter 3, which is when David fled from his son Absalom, we can see that all these people are coming against David. Verse 2, of course, says there's no salvation for him in God. Shimei cursed David and said that the Lord was giving the kingdom to Absalom, and we could see that in 2 Samuel 16:7 and 8. And so while David is fleeing from Absalom, he's fleeing out of the city, and this character, Shimei, curses David and tells him this. And so something that's interesting about David in this story is that when David's fleeing from his son Absalom, he didn't know why God had put him in the situation, and he didn't know how it was going to end up. But he did trust God regardless of what was going to happen or why it was happening. You know, in 2 Samuel 15:25-26, David says something to the effect of, who knows if I find favor in his eyes, or he says, if he says, I have no pleasure in you. And 16:12, he says, it may be that the Lord will repay me with good. And so the point being, he didn't know why, and he didn't know what was going to be the outcome. He just trusted in the Lord. All right, verse 3 says, But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. The Lord is described as three things here: a shield, my glory, and the lifter of my head. In regards to a shield, the Lord as a shield is used many times in the book of Psalms. We can see, I have a list here. You could look at Psalm 18:2, 18 verse 30, and you could push forward all the way to Psalm 144 verse 2. In regards to my glory, I thought it was interesting in 1 Corinthians 10:31, it tells us that whatever we do, we should do it to the glory of God. And indeed, God is our glory, and he was David's glory. The lifter of my head, this can refer to the restoration of a position. And as it would end up, we know the end of the story, David is restored as the king of Israel. And so in that sense, God did lift up his head. And we could see that in 2 Samuel 19:14-15. Some other examples of this terminology of lifted up can be seen in Genesis. For example, Pharaoh lifted up the cupbearer's head and restored him to his position. In Genesis 40:13, it says, "In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. Then you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly, when you were his cupbearer." And then, of course, in Genesis 40:19, Pharaoh lifted up the baker's head off of his body. It says, "In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you." All right, verse 4 says, "I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill." Selah. David cries aloud to the Lord, and he answers him from his holy hill. If you want to look more into the holy hill, you can see a few places in the Psalms: Psalm 2:6, Psalm 15:1, and Psalm 43:3. Verse 5, "I lay down and slept. I awoke again, for the Lord sustained me." The Lord sustained David and those who were with him while they were fleeing from Absalom. For example, in 2 Samuel 17:28 through 29, it tells us that David and those who were with him were provided with beds, basins, earthen vessels, wheat, barley, flour, parched grain, beans and lentils, honey and curds, and sheep and cheese from the herd. Verse 6, "I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around." Here, he will not be afraid of many thousands. See notes in verse 1 and 2 where I talked about the many foes that were coming against David. And ultimately, Absalom pursued David with all the men of Israel. That's what it tells us. But in regards to not being afraid, of course, that's a common theme in the book of Psalms. One of my favorite, Psalm 56:3. "Whenever I'm afraid, I will trust in you, God." Forgive my singing, but that's how I would say that to my son when he was a little guy. So there you have it. Alrighty, verse 7. "Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth of the wicked." Right? "Arise, save me, for you strike all my enemies." David's forces defeated Absalom's forces, and David knew that the victory belonged to the Lord. Think of Proverbs 21:31. "The horse is made ready for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord." And then, of course, "You break the teeth of the wicked." We can see another example of this wording in Psalm 58:6, where it says, "O God, break the teeth in their mouths, tear out the fangs of the young lions, O Lord." Alrighty, verse 8 says, "Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people, Selah." Salvation does indeed belong to the Lord. Psalm 37:39 says, "The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their stronghold in a time of trouble." Then, of course, it says, "Your blessing be on your people." 2 Samuel 19:12 says, "You are my brothers, you are my bone and my flesh." This entire psalm, David uses words like "my" and "me." And then here in this last verse, he switches it to "your people." David prays for the Lord's blessing to be on his people. And David loved the people of Israel, and he counted himself among them.